Well, 2024 hopefuls trying to woo voters at the Iowa State Fair over the weekend. Watch.
The other candidates came here, they had like 6 people.
At the end of the day, I'm running for president to reverse the decline of the country, to stop Biden, and I think I'll be the nominee.
Do you want reform or do you want revolution? I stand on the side of revolution.
These are people making decisions on national security. These are people making decisions on our kids' future economy. We need people at the top of their game.
I want to debate Joe Biden, and I think that's the contest that Americans really need, and that's the contest that Americans have a right to see.
Meanwhile, a new poll finding half of Arizona Republicans say they support the GOP. 25% say they support former President Trump, and only 25% say they support both. Joining me now for our political panel, Vice Chair of the Center for Election Integrity, Hogan Ridley. He's also the former National Press Secretary for the Trump campaign. And also here, Democratic strategist and former Biden campaign surrogate, Kevin Walling. Guys, good morning. Hogan, I'm going to start with you on this Arizona poll, which is pretty darn surprising. Arizona shaping up again to be a battleground state.
Yeah, always. It seems like every time we have an election, all eyes are on a handful of states. Arizona is one of those. And you see the polling out there pretty clear. They want Donald Trump right now. They want someone who's strong and stands up for those America First policies that really improve the lives of all Americans, regardless of race, religion, color, or creed. And so many are clamoring for that again. What you're seeing is Donald Trump continuing to build on his lead in the presidential primary right now. And barring some unforeseen incident, I expect him to be the nominee again. And we're going to have this battle all over. We had it once before. It seemed like a lot of fun for people like myself and for Kevin. We'll see how it goes from here. But Donald Trump really focusing on the things that really went to set up a better future for America's citizens. That's what it's all about. And that's what he's doing now.
Well, I don't know if fun's the word that I would use, but we'll see how this is going to go. Kevin, over to you. I do want to pivot back to Iowa with you. Obviously, Iowa is a must-win for a lot of the gentlemen that you see on your screen. I know I'm asking you to comment on the Republicans, Kevin, but it was quite the cage match if you looked at DeSantis and Trump over the weekend. What do you think that this is doing?
Well, Cheryl, it's a lot more fun to comment on the Republicans than the Democrats at this point. But listen, we're 154 days out from Iowa, which is, as Hogan knows, a political eternity, right? You at this point in the cycle back in 2016, Scott Walker was leading the pack with 17%, and both Ted Cruz, who actually won Iowa in 2016, and Donald Trump were polling in the single digits. So there's a lot of runway left for the Republican field to figure it out. But, I agree with Hogan at this point. Donald Trump is the presumptive nominee on the Republican side, clearly, with the enthusiasm that you're seeing among base Republicans. And we're likely headed to that 2020 rematch. Yeah,
okay. Again, I'm not going to use the word fun, but I'm not going to let you off the hook with the Democrats, Kevin, because a new Politico reports finding that President Biden's team thinks the abortion issue puts a new state is in play for his reelection. Here's what they write. His aides are moving to expand the map. They believe North Carolina is a legitimate pickup opportunity and no longer Democratic fool's gold. Kevin, how do you respond to this report from Politico?
Well, it's certainly an interesting take. Abortion is clearly an animating issue after the end of Roe versus Wade. We saw it play heavily in the midterms in that Wisconsin election for that judicial nominee on the Supreme Court, most recently in Ohio, as you mentioned earlier, Cheryl. So I think, you have to win 270. I like focusing on, those core states that we can clearly win. We got to hold that blue wall, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Everything else is gravy. I think we, as Democrats, often get our hopes up when it comes to a state like Florida, when it comes to a state like Ohio that has been trending away with us. So let's make sure our base is out in those key states before we look for too much more ground.
Well, and Hogan, I want to pick up on that because, if you look at what happened in the midterms, many Republicans were surprised by their losses, in particular when it came to the issue of abortion. But now when you've got the 2024 GOP field out there, different candidates have different ways that they're skirting around the issue. Some are answering the questions if you're Mike Pence. Some are not, Hogan. How do you advise? I know that you were a Trump advisor, but how do you advise those candidates now? Because it is a hot button issue for voters.
Right. Most people in this country sit somewhere in the middle, shock of shocks, that they don't really want any restrictions in the first trimester, some in the second, and then a lot in the third. The problem with Republicans is after the Roe v. Wade decision, we just shut up about it, and we let the left paint us in these crazy radical ideology lights, which weren't true. And in fact, it's the Democrats who have the problem here on the actual issue, because every single Democrat in the United States Senate voted for a bill that would have allowed for abortion anywhere, anytime, any place, for any reason up until the moment of birth, and they wanted you to pay for it. 86% of the people in this country disagree with that, and Republicans refuse to have the conversation. It seems like they're really willing to have the fight and explain their position on life, but they never make the left explain their position on death. It's going to be a really big issue, though, coming up, I think, in the next election, because Democrats are going to make sure it's on the ballot in so many states. And it's a fight worth having for sure. But most Americans stand in the middle. And so if you're talking about a policy prescription, you need to let the states decide, as Roe v. Wade did. It kicked it back to the states. And while we're on the subject, just real quickly, 67% of the people in this country felt once Roe v. Wade was overturned that it outlawed abortion. You want to talk about the best misinformation, disinformation campaign ever. So clearly people don't know enough about the topic, and Republicans need to do a better job talking about it, defending their position, and making the other side defend theirs.
Okay, well, another big position, and Kevin, I'll end this with you because this is President Biden. We've just gotten the schedule for the week, and he and a lot of the administration are going to be out this week touting the one-year anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act. But Kevin, I covered the data here on Fox Business, and inflation's going the other way. How's he going to paint this?
Well, certainly inflation has been a key stumbling block for Americans. We're obviously in a much better position than the rest of the world when it comes to inflation. But, you know, you're going to have the president talking about these great investments that we're making in terms of infrastructure, in terms of chips, in terms of manufacturing, actually making things back in America. And we'll see if that message resonates. Clearly, there's a little bit of a disconnect right now with Americans when it comes to the economy. And we've got to do a better job as Democrats selling it to Americans that we're actually in pretty good shape and getting better.
But, you know, Kevin, I mean, even President Biden has now come out and said maybe it was a climate bill. Inflation Reduction Act was a climate bill. Let's just call it that.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we had to pass it, Cheryl. You know, make no bones about it. That's how we had to do it.
All right. Kevin Walling, Hogan Ridley, great discussion. Love having you both here. Thank you so much. Come back anytime.
Thanks,
Cheryl.
All right.